The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my reverie. I rushed to the kitchen, my heart pounding, to find Emily standing amidst a sea of broken shards, her eyes brimming with tears. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was trying to reach the good glasses for graduation, and I dropped them." I exhaled, relief washing over me. "It's okay, sweetheart. Are you hurt?" She shook her head, and I carefully navigated the minefield of glass to reach her. As I wrapped my arms around her, I couldn't help but notice how tall she'd grown. My stepdaughter was no longer the little girl I'd first met all those years ago. "Where's Dad?" Emily asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder. I stiffened involuntarily. "Working late again, I suppose?" Emily pulled away, her eyes searching mine. "He's been working late a lot lately, hasn't he?" Before I could respond, the front door slammed, and Daniel's voice boomed through the house. "Evelyn? Emily? Where are you two?" I felt Emily tense beside me. "In the kitchen," I called out, forcing a cheeriness I didn't feel into my voice. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened and his shirt rumpled. His eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. "What happened here?" "Just a little accident," I said, moving to grab the broom. "Nothing to worry about." "Nothing to worry about?" Daniel's voice rose. "Those were my grandmother's crystal glasses, Evelyn. How could you be so careless?" I froze, broom in hand. "I wasn't. It was my fault, Dad," Emily interjected. "I was trying to get them down for graduation, and—" "Graduation?" Daniel's brow furrowed. "That's not for another week, is it?" The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as realization dawned on Emily's face, quickly followed by hurt and disappointment. "It's this Saturday, Dad," she said quietly. "I reminded you last week, remember?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair, looking flustered. Of course. I've just been so busy with work lately, it must have slipped my mind." I felt a familiar anger bubbling up inside me. "Maybe if you were home more often, these things wouldn't slip your mind," I snapped. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means exactly what it sounds like," I retorted, my patience wearing thin. "You're never here, Daniel. You're missing everything important in Emily's life." "I'm providing for this family," Daniel shouted, his face reddening. "Someone has to pay the bills around here." "Stop it!" Emily cried out, tears streaming down her face. "Just stop fighting." The sight of her distress doused my anger like a bucket of cold water. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "Emily, sweetie, why don't you go to your room? I'll clean this up." She hesitated for a moment, looking between us before nodding and fleeing the kitchen. As soon as she was gone, Daniel rounded on me. "What the hell was that about, Evelyn? Undermining me in front of my own daughter?" I met his gaze steadily. "Your daughter needs you present, Daniel, not just your money." He scoffed. "You don't know what you're talking about. I'm doing everything I can for this family." As he stormed out of the kitchen, I couldn't help but wonder if that was true. The nagging doubts I'd been pushing aside for months came rushing back. Where was he really going all those late nights? Why did he always smell faintly of perfume I didn't wear? I gripped the broom tightly, my knuckles turning white. Something had to change, and soon. For Emily's sake, and for my own. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Daniel's late nights had become more frequent, and his excuses increasingly flimsy. It wasn't until Emily approached me one afternoon, her face etched with worry, that my suspicions truly took root. "Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I think Dad's cheating on you." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What makes you say that, sweetie?" Emily's eyes darted around nervously before she pulled out her phone. "I saw a text on his phone last night when he left it on the counter. It was from someone named Stacy. Look." My hands trembled as I took the phone. The message was brief, but damning. "Can't wait to see you tonight, handsome? Same place?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "Oh, Emily," I breathed, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so sorry you had to see this." She clung to me tightly. "What are we going to do?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "We're going to find out the truth." That night, after Daniel left for another late meeting, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. The guilt gnawed at me as I trailed his car through the city, but it was quickly overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. He pulled up to a small Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town. Through the window, I watched as he greeted a young, blonde woman with a kiss that was far from platonic. My world shattered. I don't remember driving home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in our driveway, tears streaming down my face. Emily found me there, still clutching the steering wheel. "Mom?" Her voice broke through my haze. Did you find out?" I nodded, unable to speak. Emily climbed into the passenger seat and wrapped her arms around me. We sat there in silence, our shared pain a tangible thing between us. Finally, I found my voice. "We can't stay here, Emily, not with him." She pulled back, her eyes wide. "What do you mean?" "I mean we need to leave, start over somewhere new." The words tumbled out, gaining strength as I spoke. "You're graduating soon. We could move, find a new place, just the two of us." Emily's face was a mix of emotions, fear, excitement, uncertainty. "But what about Dad? What about everything here?" I took her hand in mine. "Your father made his choice. Now it's time for us to make ours. We deserve better than this, Emily. Both of us do." She nodded slowly, a spark of determination lighting in her eyes. "Okay, let's do it." The next few days were a whirlwind of secret planning and barely contained emotions. I reached out to an old college friend who owned a real estate company in a city a few hours away. She offered me a job on the spot, sensing the urgency in my voice. All the while, we maintained a facade of normalcy around Daniel. It was excruciating, watching him lie so effortlessly about his whereabouts, knowing what I knew. The breaking point came 3 days before Emily's graduation. Daniel stumbled in late, reeking of alcohol and perfume. I was waiting for him in the living room. "Have a good meeting?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. He froze, his eyes darting around the room. "What are you talking about?" I stood, my anger finally boiling over. "I know about Stacy, Daniel. I know everything." The color drained from his face. "Evelyn, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I want you out of this house, now." He stumbled towards me, reaching out. "Please, let's talk about this. We can work it out." I stepped back, my resolve hardening. "There's nothing to work out. We're done, Daniel. Emily and I are leaving after her graduation. Don't try to stop us." As I watched him crumble before me, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. The life we had built was over, but a new one was just beginning. Emily and I would face it together, stronger for having weathered this storm. I turned and walked away, leaving Daniel standing alone in the wreckage of our marriage. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. The morning after my confrontation with Daniel, I woke to find the house eerily quiet. A note on the kitchen counter told me he'd gone to stay with a friend for a few days. I crumpled it up, a mix of relief and anxiety churning in my stomach. Emily padded into the kitchen, her eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. "Is he gone?" I nodded, pulling her into a hug. "For now. But we need to move fast, sweetie. Are you sure you're okay with this?" She pulled back, her jaw set with determination. "I'm sure, Mom. We deserve better." I squeezed her hand, marveling at her strength. "All right, then. Let's get to work." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I reached out to my old college friend, Sarah, who owned a real estate company in a city 3 hours away. When I explained our situation, she didn't hesitate. "Evelyn, I have the perfect position for you," Sarah said, her voice crackling over the phone. "We need a new head of marketing, and with your experience, you'd be perfect. When can you start?" I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. "After Emily's graduation next week." "Is that too soon?" "Not at all. I'll email you the details. And Evelyn, you're doing the right thing." With the job secured, I turned my attention to finding us a place to live. Emily and I huddled over my laptop, scrolling through apartment listings. "What about this one?" Emily pointed to a cozy 2-bedroom near her new school. I clicked on it, scanning the details. "It's perfect, Em. Let's schedule a virtual tour." As we made plans, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt. Daniel had been a part of our lives for so long. Was I doing the right thing, uprooting everything? My doubts were shattered that evening when Daniel came home unexpectedly. The smell of alcohol hit me before I even saw him. "Evelyn," he slurred, stumbling into the living room, "we need to talk." I stood, putting myself between him and Emily. "You're drunk, Daniel. This isn't the time." He lurched forward, grabbing my arm. "No, you can't leave me. I won't let you." Emily jumped up, her face pale. "Dad, stop it. You're hurting her." His grip tightened, and I winced. "Daniel, let go, now." For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd once loved in his eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by anger and fear. He released me, stumbling back. "You'll regret this," he muttered, before storming out of the house. As the door slammed behind him, Emily burst into tears. I pulled her close, my own heart racing. "It's okay, sweetie, we're okay," I murmured, stroking her hair. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. "What if he tries to stop us?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "He won't. I won't let him." That night, after Emily had finally fallen asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind racing. I knew we had to leave sooner than planned. Daniel's outburst had made that clear. I pulled out my phone, dialing Sarah's number. She answered on the second ring. "Evelyn? Is everything okay?" I took a shaky breath. "Sarah, I hate to ask this, but is there any way we could move up my start date? Things have escalated here." There was a pause, and I held my breath. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Of course, I'll make it work. Do you need help getting out?" Tears of relief stung my eyes. "Thank you, and no, I think we can manage. We just need to leave as soon as possible." As I hung up, I heard a noise behind me. Emily stood in the doorway, her face a mix of fear and determination. "I heard everything," she said quietly. "When do we leave?" I stood, crossing the room to embrace her. "Tomorrow. We'll leave right after your graduation ceremony." She nodded against my shoulder. "Good. I'm ready." As we stood there, holding each other in the quiet kitchen, I felt a surge of love and pride for my brave, resilient daughter. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. But first, we had to make it through one last day in this house. One last confrontation with Daniel. The thought sent a chill down my spine, but I pushed it aside. We were so close to freedom. Nothing could stop us now. The morning of Emily's graduation dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. As I helped Emily into her gown, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I said, smoothing down her collar. Emily's smile was tinged with sadness. "I wish we didn't have to leave like this, Mom." I cupped her face in my hands. "I know, but sometimes we have to make hard choices to protect ourselves. Are you having second thoughts?" She shook her head firmly. "No, I'm ready." As we drove to the school, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Daniel's car following us. But the streets were mercifully empty. The graduation ceremony was a blur of speeches and applause. I spotted Daniel in the crowd, his eyes red-rimmed and his suit rumpled. My heart clenched, but I pushed the feeling aside. We were so close to freedom. As Emily walked across the stage to receive her diploma, I felt a surge of pride and determination. We were doing the right thing. After the ceremony, we made our way through the crowd of well-wishers. I kept Emily close, my eyes scanning for Daniel. Suddenly he appeared in front of us, blocking our path. "Congratulations, Emily," he said, his voice strained. "I'm so proud of you." Emily tensed beside me. "Thanks, Dad." Daniel's eyes locked onto mine. "Evelyn, can we talk? Please?" I hesitated, torn between the urge to flee and the need to end this cleanly. 5 minutes, Daniel. That's all." We stepped away from the crowd, Emily hovering nervously nearby. Daniel's facade crumbled as soon as we were alone. "Please don't do this, Evelyn. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I'll do anything." I steeled myself against the pain in his eyes. "It's too late for that, Daniel. You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You can't take my daughter away from me." I wrenched free, anger flaring. "She's not just your daughter. I've been more of a parent to her than you ever were." Daniel's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this. I'll fight you every step of the way. You'll never get away with." His tirade was cut short by Emily's voice, sharp and clear. "Stop it, Dad. Just stop." We both turned to see her standing there, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not a child anymore. I can make my own decisions, and I choose to go with Mom. You did this, not her." Daniel stumbled back as if he'd been struck. "Emily, please." But she was already walking away, her head held high. I moved to follow her, but Daniel's hand shot out, grabbing my purse. "If you're leaving, you're not taking anything that's mine," he snarled. In that moment, everything seemed to move in slow motion. The purse strap snapped, spilling its contents across the ground. Among the scattered items was a small velvet box, the one containing my grandmother's ring, the last piece of my life before Daniel. As he bent to snatch it up, a fierce protectiveness surged through me. I lunged forward, my hand closing around the box just as his fingers grazed it. "This isn't yours," I hissed, clutching the box to my chest. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I saw the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Then his face hardened, and he straightened up. "Fine," he spat. "Take it. Take everything. But don't think this is over." As he stormed away, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Emily stood beside me, her face a mix of determination and fear. "Are you okay, Mom?" I nodded, my heart racing. "I am now. Let's go home, pack our things, and get out of here." As we walked to the car, I realized that this was it, the point of no return. We were leaving behind everything we knew, stepping into an uncertain future. But looking at Emily's brave face, I knew we could handle whatever came next. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. The day before Emily's graduation, I woke with a start, my heart pounding. Time was running out, and we still had so much to do. I crept downstairs, careful not to wake Daniel, who had finally come home late last night. In the dim light of dawn, I began gathering the last of our important documents: birth certificates, passports, bank statements, anything we'd need for our new life. As I rifled through Daniel's desk, my hands trembling, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold. A prenuptial agreement. One I had never seen before, let alone signed. My mind raced as I scanned the document. According to this, if we divorced, I would be entitled to nothing. No alimony, no share of our assets. How could I have missed this? Just then, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Panic surged through me as I quickly shoved the document into my bag and tried to look casual. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. "What are you doing in here so early?" I forced a smile. "Just organizing some papers for Emily's college applications. You know how scattered she can be." He grunted, unconvinced. "Right. Well, don't mess with my stuff." As he shuffled to the kitchen, I let out a shaky breath. That was too close. The rest of the day passed in a blur of last-minute preparations. Emily and I packed our bags in secret, hiding them in the trunk of my car under the guise of donating old clothes. As evening fell, Daniel announced he was going out. "Got a work thing," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. The moment the door closed behind him, Emily turned to me. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you." Her tone sent a chill down my spine. "What is it, sweetie?" She took a deep breath. "I overheard Dad on the phone last night. He knows we're planning to leave. He's going to try to stop us after the graduation ceremony." My mind reeled. How could he know? Had we been too careless? "Did you hear anything else?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Emily shook her head. "Just that he was going to take care of it tomorrow." I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands. Everything we'd planned was falling apart. With the prenup I'd discovered and Daniel's knowledge of our escape, we were more trapped than ever. "What are we going to do?" Emily's voice was small, scared. I looked up at her, my brave, beautiful daughter who had already been through so much. In that moment, I knew I had to be strong for her. "We're going to change the plan," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "We can't wait until after the ceremony. We need to leave tonight." Emily's eyes widened. "But what about graduation? My diploma?" "I know it's not ideal, sweetheart, but your safety is more important than a piece of paper. We can get your record sent to your new school later." She nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "Okay, what do we do?" I stood up, my mind racing. "Pack only what you absolutely need. We'll leave in an hour while your father's still out." As Emily hurried upstairs, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah's number. "Sarah, it's Evelyn. I hate to ask this, but is there any way we could come tonight? Things have escalated here." There was a pause. Then Sarah's voice came through, warm and reassuring. "Of course, Evelyn. I'll have everything ready for you. Just be safe, okay?" Tears pricked my eyes. "Thank you. We will." I hung up and took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. This wasn't how I'd imagined our fresh start, sneaking away in the dead of night. But sometimes the path to freedom isn't straight or easy. As I began gathering our things, I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart stopped. Daniel was home early. In that moment, I knew our window of opportunity was closing fast. It was now or never. We had to leave, and we had to leave now. "Emily," I called up the stairs, my voice urgent. "It's time. We have to go. Now." My heart pounded as I heard Daniel's key in the lock. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with panic. "Go out the back." I whispered urgently. I'll distract him. She nodded, slipping silently down the stairs and towards the kitchen. I took a deep breath and moved to intercept Daniel. He stumbled through the door, reeking of alcohol. His eyes narrowed as he saw me. What are you doing up? I forced a smile. Couldn't sleep. How was your work thing? He grunted, pushing past me. Fine. Where's Emily? Asleep, I lied smoothly. Big day tomorrow, remember? Daniel paused, his gaze sharpening. Right. Graduation. I held my breath as he looked around suspiciously. Had he noticed the missing photos, the empty spaces where our lives used to be? Suddenly, a crash echoed from the kitchen. Daniel's head snapped up. What was that? Before I could stop him, he was striding towards the sound. I followed, my heart in my throat. We burst into the kitchen to find Emily frozen by the back door, a broken vase at her feet. Her overnight bag was clutched in her hand. Daniel's face contorted with rage. What the hell is going on? Emily's eyes met mine, filled with fear and determination. In that moment, I knew we couldn't run anymore. It was time to face this head on. We're leaving, Daniel, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's over. He whirled on me, his fists clenched. Like hell you are. You're not taking my daughter anywhere. Emily stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. I'm not your property, Dad. I'm going with Mom, and you can't stop us. Daniel's face turned an alarming shade of red. He lunged forward, grabbing Emily's arm. You ungrateful little... I didn't think, I just reacted. My hand connected with Daniel's face with a resounding slap. He staggered back, shock replacing anger. Don't you dare touch her, I hissed. For a moment the kitchen was silent, except for our heavy breathing. Then Daniel straightened, a cold smile spreading across his face. You think you can leave? Good luck with that. He pulled out his phone, waving it tauntingly. One call to my lawyer and you'll be left with nothing. Remember that prenup you signed? My blood ran cold. The prenup I'd found earlier, the one I'd never actually signed. He was bluffing, but Emily didn't know that. I saw the doubt flicker in her eyes. Mom? I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would define our future. I could cave to Daniel's threats, stay in this toxic marriage for financial security, or I could take a leap of faith, trusting in the strength Emily and I had built together. You're right, Daniel, I said calmly. I might walk away with nothing material, but I'll have what matters most, my integrity and my daughter. I turned to Emily, holding out my hand. It's your choice, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. The seconds stretched like hours as Emily looked between us. Then, with a resolute nod, she took my hand. Daniel's facade cracked. You can't do this. I'll fight you every step of the way. Save it for the lawyers, I cut him off. We're done here. As we walked out the front door, Daniel's threats fading behind us, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Emily squeezed my hand as we got into the car. Are you sure about this, Mom? What if he's right about the prenup? I started the engine, a small smile playing on my lips. Let's just say I have a few surprises of my own. Now, how about we go make that graduation ceremony? As we drove away from the house that had been our prison for so long, I knew the hardest part was yet to come. But with Emily by my side, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The sun was just peeking over the horizon as we hit the highway, painting the sky in hues of hope. It was a new day in more ways than one, and we were finally, truly, on our way to a better life. The key turned in the lock of our new apartment, and as the door swung open, I felt a rush of emotions, relief, excitement, and a lingering fear that this was all too good to be true. Emily stepped in behind me, her eyes wide as she took in our new home. We did it, Mom, she whispered, a smile breaking across her face. I pulled her into a tight hug, feeling the tension of the past few days finally start to ebb away. We sure did, sweetheart. As we began to unpack our meager belongings, my phone buzzed incessantly. Daniel's name flashed on the screen, along with a barrage of increasingly angry text messages. I silenced the phone, pushing down the guilt and anxiety that threatened to surface. Is that Dad? Emily asked, her voice tight. I nodded, forcing a reassuring smile. Don't worry about it. He'll calm down eventually. But as the day wore on, Daniel's messages became more frantic and threatening. By evening, my phone was ringing nonstop, and I could feel my resolve starting to crumble. Maybe I should talk to him, I muttered, more to myself than to Emily. She grabbed my hand, her eyes fierce. No, Mom. Remember why we left. Don't let him manipulate you. I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her determination. You're right. We're in this together. Just as we were settling in for our first night in our new home, a loud banging on the door made us both jump. Daniel's voice, slurred and angry, echoed through the apartment. Evelyn, I know you're in there. Open this door right now. Emily's face drained of color. How did he find us? My mind raced. Had I been careless? Left a trail somehow? The banging intensified, and I could hear our neighbors starting to stir. Emily, go to your room and lock the door, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Call the police. As she disappeared down the hall, I approached the door, my heart pounding. Daniel, you need to leave. Now. Not until you open this door and talk to me, he roared. You can't just take my daughter and run. I leaned against the door, feeling it shake with each of his blows. She's not just your daughter, Daniel, and we're not coming back. It's over. His voice dropped, taking on a pleading tone that made my stomach churn. Evelyn, please, I'm sorry, I'll change, we can work this out. For a moment I hesitated. The familiar pull of his manipulations tugged at me, years of conditioning threatening to override my resolve. Then I heard Emily's voice, soft but firm, from behind me. Mom, the police are on their way. Stay strong. Her words snapped me back to reality. I straightened up, my voice clear and unwavering. Daniel, I'm not opening this door. If you don't leave now, you'll be arrested. Is that what you want Emily to see? There was a long pause, broken only by the sound of approaching sirens. Then, with a final defeated thud against the door, I heard Daniel's footsteps retreating. As the police arrived, taking statements and ensuring our safety, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. We had faced our final test and come out stronger. Later that night, as Emily slept peacefully in her new room, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Daniel. I'm sorry. I'll sign the papers. Just take care of her. Tears pricked my eyes as I realized the magnitude of what we'd accomplished. We had broken free, faced our fears, and come out the other side. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but we had each other, and that was enough. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We had weathered the storm, and now, finally, we could begin to rebuild our lives on our own terms. The future was ours to shape, and for the first time in years, I was excited to see what it would bring. The day I served Daniel with divorce papers was the day I truly reclaimed my life. My hands shook as I watched him read through the documents, his face cycling through shock, anger, and finally defeat. Alimony? He sputtered, looking up at me with disbelief. After everything I've done for you and Emily? I stood my ground, channeling all the strength I'd built over the past months. Everything you've done? You mean the neglect, the lies, the infidelity? Yes, Daniel. Alimony, for the emotional turmoil you've put us through. He slumped in his chair, the fight draining out of him. You're really going through with this, aren't you? I am, I said firmly. It's time we both moved on. As I turned to leave, Daniel's voice stopped me. Evelyn, I'm sorry. For everything. I paused at the door, not turning back. I know, Daniel, but sometimes sorry isn't enough. Walking out of that office, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Back at our new apartment, Emily was waiting, her face a mix of anxiety and hope. How did it go? I pulled her into a hug. It's done, sweetheart. We're starting our new life on our own terms. Tears welled up in her eyes. I'm proud of you, Mom. We did it. As we settled into our new routine, challenges arose. There were tight budgets to navigate, a new job for me to adjust to, and Emily's transition to college life. But through it all, our bond grew stronger. One evening, as we sat on our small balcony watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. Mom, I need to tell you something. My heart skipped a beat. What is it, honey? She took a deep breath. I've been thinking about changing my major. I know we talked about business, but I want to study social work. I want to help other families like you helped us. Tears pricked my eyes as I pulled her close. Oh, Emily, I'm so proud of you. You follow your heart, always. As the weeks turned into months, our new life took shape. I threw myself into my work, finding a sense of purpose I'd long forgotten. Emily thrived in her studies. her passion for helping others growing with each passing day. Daniel, true to his word, signed the divorce papers without contest. The alimony payments helped ease our financial burden, allowing us to focus on healing and growth. 1 year to the day after we left our old life behind, Emily and I stood in our living room, surrounded by friends from work and school. The room buzzed with laughter and conversation, a far cry from the tense silences of our past. As I looked around at the life we'd built, I felt a surge of pride and gratitude. We had faced our fears, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger than ever. Emily appeared at my side, linking her arm through mine. "Penny for your thoughts, Mom?" I smiled, squeezing her hand. "Just thinking about how far we've come, how strong we are together." She nodded, her eyes shining. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" "The best," I agreed. As the party continued around us, I realized that this moment of joy, of peace, of true connection, was what I'd been fighting for all along. Not just for Emily, but for myself too. We had rewritten our story, transforming pain into strength, fear into courage. And as I looked towards the future, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Our journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now we were writing our own story, on our own terms, and that made all the difference. As the night wound down and our guests departed, Emily and I stood at the window, watching the city lights twinkle below. She leaned her head on my shoulder, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "You know, Mom," she said softly, "I used to think happily ever afters were just for fairy tales, but now I think maybe we've found ours." I wrapped my arm around her, my heart full. "You're right, sweetheart, this is our happily ever after, and we've earned every bit of it." As we stood there, bathed in the soft glow of our new life, I knew that we had not just survived, we had triumphed, and our story, our real story, was only just beginning.